He said he'd be back on Sunday. But that weekend, my husband crossed the ocean with our 4-year-old daughter and never came back. He took her to a country where my name on her birth certificate meant absolutely nothing. This wasn't a disappearance. It was a calculated abduction, legally invisible, carried out by someone the justice system still trusted. And the worst part? This happens to mothers every year, and almost none of them get their child back. My name is Lauren Mahon. In 1993, I was a newly divorced woman trying to rebuild my life in the United States with my 4-year-old daughter. The marriage was over, yes, but I believe my daughter's emotional stability depended on maintaining, as much as possible, some kind of relationship with her father. Our legal agreement was clear. Custody was mine, with alternating weekend visits for him. I wanted to be fair, and above all, I wanted peace. Life was simple. I worked part-time, dropped my daughter off at daycare, rushed to pick her up, cooked, told bedtime stories. She loved to draw, always catching the sun and two of us holding hands. There was no luxury, but there was love. I felt tired, but whole. The divorce had hurt, of course, but seeing her smile, hearing her voice call me Mommy every morning, I was sure we were making it. Her father, though temperamental, had never shown signs of harming her. He was strict, controlling, but claimed to love her. When he asked to take her for a long weekend, I hesitated. But I gave in. After all, he was her father, and I didn't want to seem unreasonable. On Friday, he showed up with an extra backpack and a smile I mistook for effort. He tied her shoelaces, picked up her teddy bear, and said, "We'll be back Sunday night." I smiled back, trying to ignore a small discomfort on my chest. It was just another weekend, I told myself. Nothing out of the ordinary. But there was something in his goodbye that I missed, something subtle, hidden in the routine of a repeated gesture. When I closed the door, I had no idea what would be the last time I'd see my daughter as part of my daily life. The stability I had spent years building was about to be ripped away with a calculated coldness, and the justice system that was supposed to protect me would simply say, "There's nothing we can do now." Sunday came, but they didn't. At first, I tried to stay calm. Maybe there was a delay, maybe he lost track of time. I called, and I called, and I called. No answer. Send messages. Silence. By Monday, I was calling every hospital in the city. On Tuesday, I went to the police. On Wednesday, I heard the words that froze my blood. Your ex-husband and your daughter boarded an international flight Saturday night. Destination, Amman, Jordan. Something broke inside me. I remembered the feeling exactly, like the air had been sucked out of the room. The officer kept talking, but the words stopped making sense. Jordan, how did he manage that? Without an authorized passport? Without my consent? How did no one stop them at the airport? The answer cut like a knife. The father holds Jordanian nationality. In some countries, maternal custody doesn't hold legal weight when there's a jurisdictional conflict. In other words, in the eyes of their authorities, I was no longer a mother. I was just a foreign woman trying to take a child from her country of origin. In the following days, I was plunged into a maze of laws, diplomatic treaties, and absurd bureaucracies. I learned that despite living legally in the US, my daughter was now in a land where women's rights were minimal, and where a father could keep custody simply by being a man. The Hague Convention, which was supposed to protect mothers like me, was practically useless when applied to countries with their own interpretation of family law. I called lawyers, I reached out to the embassy, I sat in front of federal agents and told my story with a trembling voice. Everyone listened. Everyone sympathized. But in the end, they all said the same thing. It'll take time, and even with a favorable ruling, the odds of recovering her slim. There was no international police force that could enter the country and bring my daughter back. I was staring at a legalized kidnapping, a theft protected by diplomatic silence. And that's when the cruelest truth hit me. The system wasn't coming for me. There would be no official rescue. If I wanted my daughter back, I'd have to break the rules or learn to live without her. I thought reporting a kidnapping would be enough to activate every international protection mechanism. But I learned that hard way. Once the border is crossed, time starts working against the mother and in favor of the one who took the child. In the first few days, I was told to contact the FBI, then the State Department. I submitted documents, birth certificates, custody proof, every protocol. But all I got in return were vague timelines, neutral expression, automated emails. Your case is under review. Unfortunately, we cannot interfere in matters of sovereignty. We suggest waiting for diplomatic channels. Wait, hope, endure. They told me Jordan was a signatory of Hague Convention, but that its application was limited, which in practice meant this. Yes, there is an international agreement, but no, it isn't enforced the same way everywhere. And even if it were, it would still take months or years. And even if everything went in my favor, there would still be one unanswered question. Would he let her return? Meanwhile, I woke up every day with the same burning doubt in my chest. Where did she sleep last night? Is she scared? Are they telling her I abandoned her? Are they erasing my face from her memory? Time was my enemy, and the system, well, the system wasn't different. I began to see a brutal truth. International justice has protocols, but no urgency, and a desperate mother doesn't fit into anyone's calendar. I saw women spend 10, 15 years trying to get their children back. Some died trying. Others were forced to accept supervised visits in countries where they didn't even speak the language. And me? I didn't want to see my daughter in a cold courtroom across the world. I wanted her home, alive, whole, with her teddy bear, her drawing of the sun, and that curious way she mispronounced her words. But every legal path was jammed, or worse, paralyzed, and the more days passed, the clearer it became. No one was coming to save me from this pain. I was absolutely alone, and if I wanted to change the course of this story, I'd have to break every rule in place. In movies, a mother's despair is loud, screams, slamming doors, ticking clocks. But in real life, despair is silent. It hides in the untouched coffee mug, the perfectly made bed of a child who never comes back, the tiny clothes that still smell like home. The silence of absence doesn't make noise, but it devours everything inside. The worst part wasn't knowing where my daughter was. It was not knowing how she was. Was she crying at night? Sleeping alone? Was she scared? Did she still call me Mom? Or had they already convinced her I never existed? Every notification on my phone made my heart skip. Every anonymous call brought a flicker of hope and ended in more silence. The world went on. People went to work, talked politics, planned holidays. And me? I could barely breathe. I was trapped in a frozen time loop where days passed without color and nights stretched without end. I started collecting what was left of her. A drawing buried in a drawer, a rolled up pair of socks, a little note in crooked handwriting that says, Mummy, I love you more than the sky. It was all I had, and I held on to these fragments like a branch above deep water, the last thing keeping me from drowning. What hurt the most was realizing the system felt no urgency, because it wasn't their child. To them, it was just another case. To me, it was my daughter, my story, my blood. I cried alone, I begged alone, I screamed in silent prayers to a God who many times felt just as distant. And then one afternoon, when there were no more tears left, someone said, Have you thought about going outside the system? Hiring someone, well, experienced? I laughed nervously, almost called it insane. But that idea landed in my mind like a spark of dry grass, because deep down, I already knew. If I wanted my daughter back, I'd have to step off the safe path. I'd have to do what every mother does when justice fails. Go to the end, even if the end costs everything. The idea was whispered, almost as if the person knew that they were offering something you don't offer to an ordinary mother. I was no longer an ordinary mother. I was a woman at war, and by that point, the thing that scared me most wasn't risking everything. It was waiting. The proposal was clear and brutal. A team of former US military specialized in overseas operations. They weren't part of any official agency. No badges, no flags, no government behind them. But they had one thing no one else had offered me: immediate action. A real plan and a chance, however small, to bring my daughter home. I met them in a discreet room outside Dallas. Three men, experienced eyes too calm for people who face danger daily. They listened to me carefully without judgment. They made no promises. They didn't use soft words. They simply said, If you agree, we'll do our best. But you have to understand, we can't guarantee safety, or success, or even peace after this. I went home that night in mental collapse. I, who had always lived inside the law, was now staring down the possibility of violating borders, deceiving authorities, lying to the world, all for one child. My child. I spent hours staring at her empty crib, at the toys she had scattered before leaving. I felt the weight of every decision, and I asked myself the question no mother ever wants to face. Does she still remembers me? The next morning I said yes, not out of bravery, not out of madness, but because saying no meant accepting the loss. And accepting the loss would have been the same as burying myself alive. From that moment on, my life stopped being mine. My phone became a direct channel with people who spoke in codes. Encrypted maps started arriving by email. They studied school schedules, escape routes, the father's home routine. Every detail was analyzed down to the second. Everything had to be silent, fast, and exact. They warned me. Any mistake could mean losing custody for good, or worse, a diplomatic incident, prison, retaliation. But none of that scared me anymore. The mother I used to be before the kidnapping was gone. The one who remained was no longer willing to respect limits imposed by people who had never had their child ripped from their arms. They didn't wear uniforms, they didn't use full names, and they never said the same thing twice. What they were planning wasn't a simple rescue, it was a clandestine operation, outside every legal convention, dependent on silence, precision, and luck. For weeks, the three men studied the father's routine. They found out which school my daughter was enrolled in, her entry and exit times, the numbers of playground supervisors. They analyzed every street, every blind spot, every security camera. They sent me brief, coded updates. Phase 1 complete, ground confirmed, route A secured. Nothing more. I couldn't ask questions. I could only wait. The school was private, surrounded by high walls with minimal security, which worked in our favor. The biggest vulnerability was during recess, when the children played outside. That's when they chose to act. But it wasn't enough to show up and run. They have to deceive the system from within. One of the men posed as local delivery worker. Improvised uniform, fake badge, package in hand. He had only seconds to get close to her without drawing attention. The second man waited in the car, engine running, ready to leave as soon as she was inside. The third was positioned on a nearby rooftop, watching every move with binoculars and a concealed radio. None of them carried weapons. Any sound, any hesitation, and it would all fall apart. The operation was scheduled for Thursday. I knew that. But they didn't tell me the time, they didn't tell me the escape route, they didn't even tell me which country she would be taken to. It's safer that way. For them, for her, and for me. Still, that morning was the longest of my life. I sat on the living room floor, phone in hand, waiting for a message that could change everything or never come at all. With each passing minute, the fear grew. I imagined 1,000 scenarios. What if someone noticed? What if she cried? What if the father was nearby? What if... Then, after hours of defeating silence, the message arrived. The child is with the team. All quiet, exiting now. My whole body shook. It wasn't the end, but it was the first real step toward bringing her home. And even without seeing her, even without touching her, in that moment, for the first time in months, I felt my daughter coming back to me. It all happened under 5 minutes, but for me, on the other side of the world, every second felt like a lifetime. That morning, my daughter was in the schoolyard playing with the other children, while one of the men, disguised as a local courier, walked through the main gate holding a fake package and a plastic badge. No one suspected a thing. No one asked questions. They had rehearsed the path a dozen times. The driver was already parked across the street in a plain, neutral-colored car. The third man, stationed on a nearby balcony with binoculars and a hidden radio, monitored every movement. Every step was tracked, every gesture perfectly timed. The man approached her calmly. He called her name softly, showed the badge, told her that her mother had sent him to pick her up. And maybe because she was already used to stranger working for her father, or maybe because her little heart deep down wanted to be true, she trusted him. She reached out her hand. In the next few seconds, he lifted her gently, whispered that everything would be okay, and began walking to the car. She didn't cry, she didn't scream, she didn't resist. She just held on tightly to her teddy bear, as if she knew, without fully understanding, that this might be her only chance to come home. The gate closed behind them, the car drove off in silence. No one noticed. No alarms, no sirens, no commotion. Just a muffled sound of tires rolling over cobblestones, and a little girl in the back seat, staring out the window like someone stuck in a dream, not sure whether to wake up. On my side, when the confirmation came through, my whole body locked up. I tried to stand and collapsed to my knees. My hands trembled. I couldn't form words. It was joy, relief, and terror, all at once. A kind of pain I still don't know how to describe. Because she was on her way, yes, but the danger hadn't passed. They still had to cross the border, and every checkpoint could have been the end. But in that moment, in that fragile fraction of time when she was pulled out of that place, I knew something had changed forever. The world hadn't listened, the justice system hadn't acted, but my daughter was coming home. The flight landed at sunset. I smiled this tweaked plan, arriving from a carefully chosen intermediary country to avoid diplomatic complications. I was there, waiting on the tarmac, but my legs didn't seem to work. I felt like I was watching someone else's life, until I saw her. Small, thin, holding the same teddy bear she had with her the day she disappeared. She came down the stairs with slow steps, accompanied by one of the men, who was pretending to be a distant uncle. When our eyes met, I wanted to run, I wanted to scream, I wanted to break down in tears, but I couldn't. All I could do was open my arms. She came, without a word, without hesitation. She nestled into my chest and stayed there, small, warm, silent. I kept repeating over and over, "You're here, you're here, Mom is here." But she didn't speak, she didn't smile, she didn't ask anything. She just held me like someone returning to a familiar place, but no longer feeling quite at home. There was something in her eyes I had never seen before. A shadow, a silence too deep for a 4-year-old child. That night we slept together. She clung to me as if afraid of being taken away. And I woke up every 15 minutes just to check if she was still there. The reunion was real. The relief was real. But peace didn't come. Because deep down I knew physical rescue was just the beginning. What we had lost went far beyond distance. In the days that followed, she remained quiet, avoiding talking about her father, avoiding mentioning Jordan. Sometimes she drew faces with no eyes. Other times she just stared out the window, as if waiting for something. She didn't throw tantrums. She didn't make demands. And that overly calm behavior is what scared me the most, because my daughter was intense, full of life. But after the rescue, all that remained was a little girl who didn't yet know if she was truly safe. I had her back, but not whole. And in that silence on the way home, in the space between the hug and her first word, I realized the mother who went to hell to bring her daughter back would never be the same. And the daughter may have left a part of herself behind. People would say, "You're a hero." Others would comment, "You did what any mother would have done." But inside me, there was a voice that wouldn't shut up. What if she had gotten hurt? What if you had failed? What if, to save her, you exposed her to even more fear? Even with my daughter back in my arms, the guilt weighed heavier than the absence. It was a guilt no one could see. It didn't show in the reunion photos. It wasn't something you could post. But it was there, staring back at me in the mirror, in sleepless nights, and the question she never asked. I revisit every decision 1,000 times. The choice to go outside the law, The contact with the ex-military team, the lies I had to tell, the risks I had accepted. I knew that if anything had gone wrong, my daughter could have been taken even deeper into a world I'd never be able to reach. And the cruelest part, she didn't understand what happened. To her, a man had shown up at school, said he was there because of me, and she obeyed. Maybe she thought it was a game. Maybe she was scared and just didn't show it. I'll never know, because she never talked about the day. Not even when I tried, not even when I insisted. She would change the subject, or hold me tighter, like she was saying, I'm here, but I don't want to go back there. And that broke me. With every therapy session, I hoped for answers. I hoped someone would say, she'll forget, she'll get over it. But no one promised anything. The trauma was unpredictable, and all I could do was be present, close, attentive, hoping that one day she would feel safe enough to speak, to trust, to become herself again. What hurt the most was knowing I was the one who put her at risk. Yes, he was the abductor. Yes, the whole world failed us. But the final decision, the one that changed everything, was mine. And even though I did what had to be done, I carried the consequences like a stone inside my chest. I don't regret bringing her back. Never. But the mother I once was died the moment I said yes to the plan. And since then, I've learned that the love that rescues is also the love that bleeds. The world saw the ending, the reunion, the hug, the return home. But no one saw what came after, because what wounds the most is exactly what no one can see. My daughter came back, but with eyes that had learned to protect themselves too nearly. She clutched her teddy bear with a grip that felt like defense. Any noise made her flinch. Simply words like leaving or trip made her tense. And when she saw old photos, she whispered, does that place still exist? Do we still live in the happy place? She stopped drawing, stopped laughing out loud, stopped asking for stories at bedtime. It was like she was there, but not whole. And no matter how hard I tried to restore a sense of normal life, something deeper kept surfacing. She no longer trusted the world, and deep down, I didn't either. I no longer trusted justice. I didn't trust international treaties that promised protection. I didn't trust borders, because I had learned, in the hardest ways, that none of it stops a child from being taken out of a mother's arms. Not laws, not passports, not even love sign and ink. Trauma became routine, and routine became survival. The hardest questions were the ones that never got answered. Do you dream about him? Did anyone hurt you? Were you afraid I'd forget you? But she never responded. Her silence was a shield, and I respected, even when it tore me apart inside, because I understood. Sometimes a child stays quiet not out of fear of others, but to hold on to the only thing she has left, her mother. And I came back, but in pieces. If this story moved you, subscribe to the channel, because here we don't share filtered versions of truth. We uncover what many prefer to keep hidden, because some truths must be told. And in the next story, you'll meet another buried truth, another life marked by silence and courage, and choices no one should ever be forced to make. If this one shook you, get ready. The next might be even more devastating.